Would you ever put your whole bonus into your employer's stock? How about a part of it? What if you're tempted to do so, but then I told you that studies show there's only a 4% chance that that's going to work out for your benefit? Hi, I'm Bjorn Amundson with Quarry Hill Advisors. Today we're going to go through restricted stock, or RSUs as they're more commonly called. We're going to go into the details of how they work and some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make over the years with these rewards. So what are restricted stock units? Well, I think you should think of a restricted stock as like a stock flavored bonus. Typically, your employer is going to give you some stock and you get to have it vest over a number of years. So let's say they say, congratulations, we're giving you 1,000 shares of this stock, but you have to wait for 12 months, and in 12 months, you're gonna get 250 shares. And then the year after that, you're gonna get 250 more shares, and so on. And then the next year, you're gonna probably get another 1,000 share award, which would vest at 250 shares per year. There's all kinds of different vesting schedules. It might be nothing for 3 years and then a cliff. It might be a third each year. It could be a quarter each year. Each company gets to choose how they're going to do it. So you're going to get these shares each year, and then at the vesting time, they become yours. And you can now do anything you want with the stock. You could hold it, or you could sell it and spend the money, or you could sell it and diversify and do something else. So that's really all there is to restricted stock units. You get the shares, and when the time comes and you get the shares, you get to do whatever you want with them. Now there's some questions about what should you do with them and how do you avoid paying too many taxes on them. So let's get into that a little bit. Now, first off, before we get into some of those details, we should keep in mind that restricted stock units are really different from something like stock options and should be treated different. Stock options have a leverage factor into them and they're a lot more complicated, and so you're going to want to be pretty careful about how you exercise those. Restricted stock units are just giving you the shares. Now when you get them, those shares don't have any dividends or voting rights or anything like that until they vest, and they don't even exist on the company books until they actually vest with you. So if, for instance, the company were to go bankrupt, well, you're going to be a general creditor, it's going to be an unsecured promise, and you're probably not going to get paid out. So let's talk about how the taxes work on restricted stock units. This is one of the most common misunderstandings I will see. It's really not all that complicated. So let's talk through how the taxes work. So using my previous example, remember how you're going to get 250 shares per year? Well, let's say those shares are trading at $100 per share. So you get a bonus effectively of $25,000 worth of stock. Not a bad deal. So they're automatically going to withhold something like 22% for federal taxes, which would be $5,500. They'll withhold Minnesota state income taxes, Social Security, and Medicare taxes as well. So if you got these 250 shares, they might withhold 99 or 100 of them, basically just to beat the taxes on them. Now, you're going to have the remaining 150 shares free and clear of taxes, and those are all going to be yours that you can decide what you want to do with them. So here's one of the common misunderstandings is people will hear that if they hold these stocks, they're going to qualify for long-term capital gains. And so I'll run into people all the time who have held their shares hoping that they get these better gains. Now the problem is those long-term capital gains only are applying to the appreciation that happens after you are given the stock or after they vest. So if you had sold them at the very moment that they vested, there would be no capital gains, and so there would be no taxes on the capital gains. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to go for these long-term capital gains on an appreciation or growth on a stock that hasn't happened yet. So I would encourage most people to not go for that long-term capital gain unless you've already seen some significant appreciation and that you didn't sell the stock right away when they vested. So mistake number one, people are going for those capital gains thinking it applies to the whole thing, but it actually only applies to the gains that take place after they vest. The second big tax mistake I will see is that people are going to assume that the default tax withholding is going to be enough to cover the taxes on them. The default for most people is going to be 22% federal, which sounds fine, except if you're in the 37% tax bracket and they only withhold 22%, you've got a liability that's coming due. Now, if you held the stock hoping that it's going to go up, but instead it goes down and you have this tax liability, now you're going to have to sell those shares for less money than you got them just so that you can pay the required taxes. Does that really sound like a smart strategy? The third mistake I'll see happen occasionally is people who maybe they do their own taxes or they have a tax preparer who's moving a little bit too fast. What happens is you get your taxes withheld from your pay stub, but then it vests at E-Trade or whatever brokerage house your stocks are at. And when you get your 1099 for those, it says that the cost basis on those is zero. So imagine you pay the taxes when they vest and they become yours automatically through withholding. That doesn't always get coordinated with what the brokerage company receives. And so they issue a 1099 saying you have paid no taxes on these. So then you sell the shares and the brokerage company says, well, you own capital gains on this whole thing. So you pay ordinary income when they vest, then you immediately sell them and pay capital gains on all the stuff that you just paid ordinary income. It's double taxation. You're paying it twice. You didn't need to pay the capital gains on that. So you have to check to make sure that when you sell these shares, that they're actually going to reflect the correct cost basis. It doesn't always happen, and it's something you want to be really careful of so that you're not accidentally double taxed on these shares. How you can spot this is if you look on your 1099 that you receive after you sell the shares on box 1E where it says cost or other cost basis. If it's blank or it's a zero, then that means that they weren't coordinated with your W-2 and you're about to be double taxed. And so you'll want to pull your pay stub showing that you've already paid the taxes on this and make sure that it gets coordinated with your CPA. So let's say you've done all the right things. You've got the stock, you've paid the taxes on it, and you're wondering, okay, what should I do with this stock now that I have it? Well, think about it in the way that a psychologist would. Are you going to use your bonus and your cash to buy more of your employer stock and just buy that? That's no different than if you were given the stock. And the stock does not care about what your emotions are. So you should think about, is this something I really want to hold? At Quarry Hill Advisors, we always like to look at what the academic evidence says you should do. And in this case, there isn't going to be a study covering your exact company, but there are studies looking at what stocks do well over time. And it turns out that in a study by Henrik Beisbender in 2018, he studied 25,300 US stocks between 1926 and 2016. Only 4% of them created the entire wealth that we see in the stock market today. The median stock over time had almost no additional gain over just putting your money into cash. So the stock market goes up over 10% per year over time, but the reality is it's only a couple of stocks that are doing extraordinarily well, and the majority of stocks are just doing as badly as cash. Now, almost everyone says, yeah, Bjorn, I know that most stocks do really poorly, but what you don't understand is my stock is amazing. My stock is special because I know this employer super well and I know they're doing great. And all I can tell you is absolutely everyone who walks into my office thinks their stock is above average. It's called the familiarity bias, and it's not Lake Wobegon. We can't all be above average. So I would encourage you, even though you have fantastic feelings about your own company, to realize that everybody else does as well. And I'd encourage you to follow the research and diversify as quickly as possible. So as soon as that stock vests, you should go ahead and sell it and diversify. For years and years, I had my 3M clients coming in year after year, and a lot of them would do the right thing and they would sell and they would diversify. And then the stock would go up a lot and they'd come into my office very upset at me. And we would maybe sell again, and then the next year they would come back very upset at me because guess what? It went up a lot. And this really hurts because most of your friends are going to do the wrong thing and they're going to keep the stock, and so they're all getting rich. And nothing hurts worse than when someone dumber than you is getting rich. And then around 2018, 3M had a huge decline, going down over 50%, and it's still just barely recovering today. And suddenly, all my 3M clients stopped complaining about the fact that we were selling their stock every single year, and now we're able to sell with confidence. So don't let a swing of the stock market determine your plan. Don't look at what happened last year. Look at what the academic studies say works over time. And the thing that works over time is to diversify. Now, when you're selling, I want you to be sure that you're being careful about your blackout windows and that you're not selling at a time where you're not allowed to do that. So always make sure you're checking with your HR or with your compliance team to make sure you're in an eligible trading window time. So when should you call a financial advisor about your restricted stock? Well, first would be if you need a tax plan and you need to come up with a time to sell it and you need to make sure enough is being withheld. The second time you might want to work with a financial advisor is when you need a plan for what to do with the proceeds. Should you diversify it? Should you put it into your 401k? Should you do a backdoor Roth IRA? Maybe it's time for using a 529 for your children. A financial advisor can help you coordinate where the best place is to achieve your goals. You need to especially call an advisor if you've accumulated a lot of stock over time and you need to diversify this and you need to sell it and you don't want to blow yourself up for taxes. There's a lot of tools in the toolkit we can use to be sure we're selling some shares, maybe donating other shares to charity, and minimizing or avoiding the capital gains entirely. So if you need any help figuring out what to do with your restricted stock, go ahead and click in our footer and schedule a meeting with me or one of our other advisors, and we'd be happy to help.